When men feel safe and secure, they'll open up. Men don't have a communication problem. Men have a safety and security problem.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Better Project, where our purpose is to crush the stigma that surrounds mental health by talking to real people and sharing raw stories, not only spreading awareness, but helping to build mental fitness and resilience. I'm your host, Nick Patar. Today, we're joined by Dylan Roos. Dylan, brother, thank you for taking some time out of your day to jump on and chat with me.
Mate, thank you. And what a ripping intro, mate. I love the building the mental fitness. It's great.
Appreciate it, bro. I love to start my podcast with some gratitude. So what are three things you're grateful for today?
Mate, it's funny you say that. Just last night, I sent a message to my mum and dad and my partner in a group chat that we've got. And I just said, like, we all live in Hawaii. And I was just saying, like, just take a moment to look around. I joined the canoe club out here and we paddle Tuesday, Thursdays. And yeah, last night the sun was setting, man. Beautiful, like Hawaiian sunset. The full moon, or like almost full moon, was on the opposite
Picturesque,
side. And
mate.
I'm just out there paddling with these, six men. And I was just like, man, I'm so grateful for just life, so grateful for where I live. All my family's really healthy. And just sitting in deep gratitude for that, when you really feel the gratitude, you're not just saying it, it's like, man, I was really feeling it. And even just now, I'm so grateful for my life, my health, where, sun, like, man, life's beautiful, man. Life is beautiful. Take a moment just to take a step back and look around, and yeah, life's good, brother. Life's good.
It is. It's awesome being able to take a step back and just enjoy the small things in life. So
Mm.
many people don't. We get caught up in the hustle and bustle in life that we don't take a step back to really appreciate what we have.
100%, man. I was meant to be living in Hawaii, living in LA, kind of chasing that hustler ambition sort of thing. And then I found out that my partner's pregnant. We decided on Hawaii, and just living here, and we live on the North Shore. It's just such a slower pace.
Mm.
And I used to think of slower pace as like, who wants a slower pace lifestyle? But like, man, it's like, what are we here to do on earth? Like, we're here to enjoy our lives. We're not here to sit in a corporate office and work 40 hours a week and then, drink ourselves silly on the weekends and then do it all over again. And it's like, nah, man, like, I love my life. Like, every day I get to wake up and go for a paddle and work in a business that I love and connect with people like yourself and do podcasts. It's like, mate, life's fucking good. Life's
It is.
good.
It is, bro. And I connect with that so much because that's why I do the podcast. That's what I do. What I do because life's too short, man. You got to do
Mm,
the things that you enjoy. And
mm,
I love that we just mentioned kids because in a way, kids make us slow down and really be present and enjoy life. Like before
mm.
I had my daughter, I was just like, yeah, I got to grind 24/7. Like put in all this work. Now I have my daughter, like every day is unpredictable. So I just got to go with the
Yeah.
flow and be present. And it's made me grow so much as a person.
Yeah, yeah, man. I'm looking forward to fatherhood.
It's exciting, bro. And for the people who don't know you, let's go back a bit before we jump into the work that you currently do. What was your upbringing like?
Upbringing was really good, man. I was really fortunate. Bit not, I mean, it was normal upbringing for me, but I guess from an outsider's looking in, I grew up with my dad being Paul Roos, massive name in AFL.
Was he the coach of the
So
Swans?
coach of the Swans,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay.
So he started in '03, which I was in year three, or he actually started halfway through 2002. So whole life was just footy, grew up watching him play until I think I was about 4 years old, maybe five. And then he retired and then he got into coaching. So I was just always surrounded by athletes, like, and good human beings, really good men. Well, my whole life. So, and he finished coaching in 2010, and then he coached me and my brother. He coached the Swans Academy, which we were both in. And so, yeah, I was just always surrounded by the football club um, culture, which most people have a negative, like you hear people go, oh, footy boy culture. For me, footy boy culture doesn't mean footy boy culture. Like, it means like really good mentors, really good human beings, like solid guys. You know, like my babysitters when I was young was like Mickey O'Loughlin, um, um, Adam Goods, like real solid human beings. I think Brett Kirk, Craig Bolton, they were my babysitters, like at a real young age. So, yeah, my upbringing was great, man. I went to Wallara Public School, which I absolutely loved my experience there. I went to Cranbrook High School, again, loved my experience at Cranbrook, surrounded by great mates, great humans, and yeah, man, like life was good. Life was good, brother. Yeah.
Did you play high level of AFL, or did you just play like kind of development and then decide to go a different path?
So I played state footy under 18s, and I loved my basketball. So I captained my high school basketball team in year 12 and played 2.5 years at like the highest level in high school. And then in footy, played state footy, and then played I think a year and a half, almost 2 years of Swans reserves footy, and then I got to 19 years old, and uh, gave it up. It's not the right word, but chose not to pursue that path anymore. Um, and it was really funny because my answer, most people are like, oh, why'd you give it up, or what, what, why didn't you follow in your father's footsteps? Because I was a pretty good footballer, and if I kind of put my head down for a year or 2 more years, I definitely could have made a list and then potentially done something with it. But whenever people ask me, why did you not pursue it anymore? My original answer was I had some injuries. I had a patella tendonitis, but also my heart wasn't in it. Like I wasn't really got to 18, 19. And I knew what it took to be a professional athlete because my entire life was surrounded by it. So I knew it isn't something that's to be taken lightly, or it's not something that's super easy. People grow up and they're like, oh, I wish I could be an athlete. It's like, no, you don't, because if you did, you would be one. Like
It's
it's
like that
really
iceberg
fucking hard.
analogy. Hey, like on top, you're like, oh, yeah, this is an athlete, but there's so
Yep.
much work that goes into that
Hmm.
and a lot of sacrifices.
Yeah, mate. So many. And even growing up, like the sacrifices I made were a lot. Like I wasn't going to parties, I wasn't drinking. I had to stay home from a lot of parties that I wanted to go to. And to a 16, 17-year-old, it's no small thing. It's not the end of the world from an adult's perspective, but as 16, 17-year-old, those things matter to you and you want to have fun and you want to hang out and do those things. But so I made the sacrifices early, but I got to 18, 19 and just decided my heart wasn't in it. But so for years, that was my answer. And then I went to a men's 2-day workshop called Awaken Man. And it was unbelievable. It was a really good weekend. And we worked through some stuff. And this was in 2019. So for 7 years, I'd been telling people, oh, my heart just wasn't really in it. And through this work at this workshops, long story short, what came up was a completely different reason. When I was in high school, my girlfriend at the time cheated on me with my best friend whilst on schoolies. And I wasn't on schoolies because I was training. It was preseason training. So I was like, I can't spend a week drinking and partying. And my dad was like, mate, you want to be a footballer? Like, you can't go to schoolies. And again, really fucking hard for me to make that decision. But I did. And so what actually happened, again, long story short, was I associated football with getting my heart broken. And so when I eventually found out, which was about 6 or 9 months after that happened, and then I gave up football, it was like, oh, my heart's just not in it. When in reality, it was, I didn't want to get hurt again. I had associated playing football and the sacrifices surrounding football with, oh, your partner will cheat on you or you'll get your heart broken, right? Yeah. So I was like, no, I don't, fuck that. I don't want that. And so I quit footy. And it took me 7 years before I finally had this drop in moment of like, that's why. And I was like, oh, as soon as the facilitator said it, I was like, that's exactly why I quit football. Yeah, you're right. Like it was that an amazing moment. So that's so I loved footy, loved basketball. They were my two sports growing up.
That's interesting. Yeah, like you built up that resent to the game because you didn't want to get heartbroken. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting because for me, growing up, I come from a rugby league background, so I played semi-professional up until when COVID hit and the seasons got cancelled. I was like, you know
Yeah.
what, I need to. I it made me realize that there's so much more to life than playing sport. There's a
Mm.
whole world, like wide world out there, like say AFL, NRL, like that's just like the east coast of Australia, basically.
Yep.
There's a massive world out there. There's so much more impact that you can have. And once I opened my eyes and I went down the path of podcasts and whatever else I do, it's like, wow, I can do so much more with my life. And that's why I hung up the boots and I didn't even watch footy for 2 years. I've only just started
Mm.
watching it again.
Yep.
And do you ever get the itch to play again? I've been having the itch lately to like, oh, strap on the boots. And then I watch a game and I'm like, I don't know if I can tackle these big Islander guys.
Funny. So I played about 5 games. I got a call up from some club in Sydney, and they're like, "Mate, well, I was living in Melbourne at the time, and they're like, mate, do you wanna play? We'll fly you up and we'll pay you." And I was like, living in Melbourne and pretty lonely at the time. Like I hadn't um, created a good group of mates yet, and so I was like, "Fuck yeah, I want to go to Sydney every weekend. I'm just going to use this to see my mates." And so they'll pay for my flights up, my flights back, and they'll give me, it was like fuck all money, but it was like enough that I was like, cool, that's worth my time to head up, and then I'll see my mates again. So I played 5 games, absolutely loved it. Um, yeah, absolutely loved it. And right now I think I'm in a place where I don't get the itch to play. I get the itch to be around a club.
Mm.
That's what I really miss. And so, as I mentioned at the start, I just joined the canoe club, and that's been great. I've been only a handful of times, but it's just great to be around other men, uh, talking about family, talking about life. So that's definitely the itch that I needed scratched, and I've got that through that canoe club,
Mm.
which is because it's also competitive. So we'll start competing in a couple of weeks' time on Saturday. So I love the competitive nature, and I've definitely missed out on that once I stepped away from sport.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. It's being able to compete again and being around a bunch of blokes that support
Mm,
you. Because for me, I play Oz tag now, which is like rugby with like tags and stuff.
yeah,
So
yep,
that's
yep,
how I get my competitive nature out, and I
yeah.
love every moment of it.
Mm,
And it's funny that you mentioned like your AFL culture growing up was so, I guess, positive in that. For me, it was kind of rugby league's a bit of an opposite thing. It was what I've experienced was there's a lot of drugs, alcohol, stuff like that.
mm,
Even at semi-professional, there was a lot of it. Don't get me
yeah,
wrong, the boys were awesome, but I didn't like after the games where they went back to the pub and they just got on the piss. Like that wasn't my vibe.
yeah,
So it's interesting that you kind of had a different kind of thing. Like no doubt
mm,
there probably was alcohol and stuff, but
yeah.
it sounds a bit different to my experience.
Yeah, well, it's prevalent in AF. I'm not trying to say that it's not prevalent in
Mm.
AFL. It definitely wasn't uh, as I got older. You become more aware of what is going on and
Yeah.
what play. You know, the elite athlete pedestal kind of gets shattered a little bit when you're like, oh, they actually are human beings, and they if drug abuse is prevalent in society, it's going to be prevalent in footy clubs.
Mm.
It's not. It's footy clubs aren't removed from society. So I always find it really bizarre when they're like, oh my god, such and such, the Ben Cousins thing, right? It's like that's the most infamous example of it, right? People were so surprised, like, oh my god, he's an elite athlete, this, and this. It's like it's so prevalent within society that drugs are abused and drug addicts are everywhere. Like, why do you think footy clubs are removed from society? I think it's a quite. I think footy clubs are still not well understood. I don't think unless you've been in the culture, you don't actually really. I don't think you can comment on it, to be honest, unless you've been in the footy club culture. So it's definitely there. But for me, yeah, my experience was really positive, and I think why is it comes down to each football club will have its own culture,
Yeah.
and that is set by the leaders of that club, the coach, the president, captain. If the coach, the president, the captain are at any level, semi-professional, and they're saying, all right, guys, here are the standards that we're going to adhere to. Here's what's acceptable. Here's what's not acceptable. You'll find that the people that want to be a part of that culture will stick around, and those that want to use your example, if they want to drink and they want to do drugs, and that's not a part of the standards that are set, they'll leave and go find another club that they'll either leave or they'll change their behavior. So I think it just comes down to who are the leaders of whatever the footy club is and what standards are they setting. Because you can see it across all sports, like when the leaders and the captains and the coaches are all off doing cocaine on a Saturday night, the young players that come into that club at 18 years old, they're like, oh, there's the best player in my football club doing this. Cool, I'm going to go and do this. So it's just the standards that are set, I feel.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, did you hear what happened? I don't know if you follow rugby league much, but like Melbourne Storm off season, like their best players were doing cocaine and stuff after the grand final.
Oh no, I didn't follow that.
Okay, yeah. So like obviously they're the top team in the league, and they're known for having a really strong culture. And then two of their top players in the off season were caught doing cocaine and stuff. So there was a big kick up, big stink about that, which is totally understandable. Like they're on such a high pedestal, for then their highest players to be caught doing that. Like it not only affects them, the team, the sport, like everything.
Yeah. It's it's really interesting. I feel like my viewpoints have changed or are even constantly changing depending on which way I kind of want to take the conversation. But I have a massive problem with tearing down athletes for being human. And it kind of comes back to my point I made before. It's like the average Joe Blow. I know I'm the outlier. I've smoked weed and done a little bit of mushrooms, and both of those things in the last 12 months. And previous to 12 months, I hadn't touched a single cigarette or a single drug. So I would say I'm in the 0.1% of Australian society, right? So that's my issue with the tearing down of athletes, regardless of, well, they're meant to be role models. Well, they're meant to do this. And it's like, yeah, you're right. And I'm not saying what they did was right or that they should have been doing it, but like, don't throw stones if you live in a glass house, buddy, you know? And I think everyone lives in a glass house in that conversation. Again, I think 0.1% of people wouldn't have done cocaine in Australia over 18 years old. And it's a massive problem. It's not, normal doesn't mean healthy. Normal does not mean healthy, but fuck, mate, you're gonna get on Twitter or Facebook and blast this guy when last weekend you and your mates were racking up, you know, in Beverly Hills. Like, well, who are you to do that? So it's a really interesting conversation, and it's I kind of fall back to like, don't do illegal things, and it's illegal. That's kind of it's like, it's illegal. Okay, so we don't have a conversation around do you do it or not. It's illegal. So yeah, you know,
it is what it is. But I think what everyone needs to understand is, one, they're human, and two, humans stuff up. So don't go putting shit on them. Like, yeah, they may stuff up, they may do drugs or whatever, but as long as they learn from that lesson and they move forward, and that's what matters. Not just them doing it, you putting shit on them and them continuing to do it, because that doesn't help the situation.
Yeah. I would add to that and say, like, people are hurting. You know, I've made this statement before, and I'll say it again. I don't think a healthy person is doing cocaine. I just don't mentally healthy, not necessarily physically. I would say I just don't think you need that escapism. And that's what most of the drugs are. They're escapism. So I look at it from a really compassionate standpoint of like, cool, people are looking at the problem, which is the cocaine. It's like the underlying reasons are way down here, and it's really deep. And it's like, when we can heal people and we can be compassionate and we go, hey man, what's going on? And hug our brothers and our sisters and come at it from that lens, you know, it's such a better way to handle these things.
Yes. Yeah. Empathy is so powerful, bro. And like, I guess as a society, we're always looking at the outside instead of going to the root cause of everything.
Yeah.
And that's why, mental health is so prevalent, suicide is so
Mm.
high, because we're just trying to mask it with drugs, alcohol, all this kind of shit, instead
Yeah.
of getting to the root cause of it all.
Yeah. Yeah, man. 100%. I'm with you. Yeah, alcohol. I mean, it's legal, but you look at what abusing that does. I
Mm.
think I was reading this statistic 50% of the murders, or 50% of victims of violent crime in America are drunk. 50% of perpetrators of the crimes are drunk. So, and it's legal to drink. So you can
Mm.
also have that conversation
Yeah.
too, where you're like, why is alcohol legal? Like, it's clearly not good for society. Um, but again, these are such
Yeah.
deeply, like, what are the solutions to that? And I think, again, you take a step back and you go, well, let's look at the root cause. You know, people are not doing well, especially through COVID. People were not doing well, right?
Mm.
So you take care of people, and the numbing agents that people use to suppress their pain, well, they don't need to numb anymore, so they don't do it as much, or they don't do it at all. But yeah, it's definitely.
It's interesting, and that's why I'm moving into the space of mental fitness and building resilience, because if we're helping people to build that, that's going
Mm,
to prevent them from picking up the bottle, from sniffing
yeah.
cocaine, from doing all that kind of stuff.
Yep. And I think Gabor Mate, who's a leading expert on addiction, or one of the leading expert addictions, he says, like, every addiction is just a poorly thought out solution to a problem, or a poor solution to a problem, right? If I'm working in a job that I hate Monday to Friday, and I drink myself silly Friday and Saturday night, what am I trying to solve? Well, I'm trying to solve the stress that my life is causing me by letting off steam on the weekend. And so it's a solution. It's not a very good one, and it's not a very healthy solution, but it's a solution nonetheless. And so I think when we take that approach and we go, okay, well, how can I find a better solution to my problem? Right? Or how can I eliminate the problem altogether so that I don't need a solution to it? Then you look at it through that lens, and you're able to make massive leaps and bounds with your mental fitness.
Mm.
And so something that I talk about quite regularly is, if you're not doing, if you're not meditating, journaling, getting sunlight, exercising, drinking like good amounts of water, getting good sleep, and maybe a couple other things as well that I could mention. But if you're not doing those basic things and doing them consistently, you're not giving yourself a fighting chance to deal with whatever it is that you're going with. Now, let's say you're ticking off all those things and you're still suffering. Well, then you've got some other things to work through as well. But you start with those basic 6 things just there that I've mentioned, and I guarantee you will see an improvement in your mental health. I guarantee it. It's not rocket science. Like, we know these things. You do those 6 things, your mental health will improve. Now, that's not saying you'll pull yourself out of suicidal thoughts into high performance. It's not saying that, but you might pull yourself out of the suicidal thoughts by doing those 6 things, and you might be depressed, but you might have moved the needle really far. That's a fucking great effort. I know I can't remember what the scale is called, but there's a scale that they use to measure mental health, and it goes from 0 to 36, I think. And if you're on antidepressants, it moves your scale 0.5 points in the right direction. If you get a good night's sleep consistently, it'll move your scale 6 points in the right direction. So right there, just by getting a healthy sleep routine, you're improving your mental health by 6 points versus antidepressants 0.5. Now, that's not saying antidepressants don't serve a purpose, because if you're at 0, that 0.5 might be keeping you alive.
Mm.
However, I think we're too quick to go straight to the antidepressants and not look at anything else in a person's life.
Exactly. It just comes back to masking it, really. That's all antidepressants kind of do, is mask it, they numb your pain, instead of
Yeah.
getting down to the root cause. And what you mentioned in those 6 things, funnily enough, they're all free.
All free. All
Everyone can
free.
do it. Yeah,
Yep.
we don't. And like, don't get me wrong, we can educate people on this stuff. We can teach them. But the saying is you can take a horse to water, but you can't force it to drink, right? So we can't force these people to do it. So
Yep.
in your opinion, how do we kind of encourage or get these people to do these six things?
Yeah. Well, I think you have to be brutally honest with where you're currently at and what you're able to do. So let's take the worst case scenario. Okay. Someone is bedridden because their depression and anxiety is so bad. Like the thought of getting up and contributing to society is so overwhelming. Okay. What can you do? Okay. I can get out of bed. Cool. Okay, we can get out of bed. Can you go for a 5 minute walk? Okay, I can go for a 5 minute walk. Great. Start there. If that's all you do is go for a 5 minute walk, great. Give yourself a pat on the back. Wow, yesterday I didn't get out of bed. Today I got out of bed and went for a 5 minute walk. Amazing. The next day, go for a 6 minute walk. The next day, go for a 7 minute walk. The next day, go for an 8 minute walk. Next day, 9. Next day, 10. Next day, 10 minute walk and 1 minute of sitting in nature, great. All of a sudden in the space of a week, you've gone from being in bed all day to 10 minutes outside and 5 minutes in nature. Great. I think we have this funny thing as humans where when we're setting goals or we're setting tasks, we have like an ego problem. We have like this thing of like, oh, I should be able to do this. And so I'm going to set that as my goal instead of going, hang on, Dylan, I can't meditate, journal, drink water, eat well, exercise, and get outside. I can't do those 6 things. But what I can do is I can get outside. Great. Start there. Get outside then. But we're not willing to do that. We're like, okay, cool. I need to do all these things. So I'm going to set a plan to do all these things. And then we don't do any of them. And then we feel like shit. And then we're still in bed. So the solution is just like being brutally honest and humbling yourself and have a conversation with yourself and go, okay, all right, Dylan, what can I do? Okay, I can exercise and I can get to sleep by 10 o'clock. Cool. Okay, let's do that. All of a sudden, the next day, you don't exercise and you go to sleep at 2 a.m. You have to have a conversation with yourself the next day. Oh, I thought I could do this and I can't. Okay, what can I do? All right, well, I can, again, to keep using this, I can go outside and I can go to sleep by 1 a.m. Okay, you go outside and then you go to sleep by 1:30. Have another conversation with yourself. All right, I couldn't do 1 a.m., but I did 1:30. That's better than 2 a.m. And I got outside. Okay, and you start to become more accurate with your assessment of your own capabilities. And when you get honest with your assessment of your own capabilities, it comes with a level of, oh, I'm not as formidable as I thought I was. Oh, that hurts. And so human beings don't want to address the fact of, oh, I'm not as formidable as I thought I was. And so we never do. And we live in this delusional state of setting big goals, never doing it, and just getting stuck in bed all day. Right.
Yeah.
So I think it's just being really honest with where you currently are at and moving the needle just 1%. 1% each day, 1% better. That's all the focus needs to be, because you do that in 12 months' time, all of a sudden you're doing 4 out of those 6 things on a consistent basis.
Exactly. And it is so confronting, I guess, having those honest conversations with ourselves too. Because, yeah, as you said, the ego gets in the way. And
Yeah.
what I've learned is, yes, you can have the big goal of whatever you want, but we've got to reverse engineer it and put the little steps in place that are going to build us up to that goal. Because as you said, we've got to make little incremental changes every single day, become 1% better.
Yeah.
And I think people underestimate how much you can achieve in, say, 12 months. They think, oh, it's going to take so long. Or they're like, oh, I want this right now. It doesn't work like that. Yes, you can achieve a lot, but you got to continue to put in the reps every single day. And I always come back to this podcast. When I started, I had no clue what I was doing. I could barely have conversations with people. Now I'm like 160 episodes. I'm talking to you today. And it's just from being consistent and putting in the reps every single day, and
Yep.
you slowly see that momentum build and build and build. It's
Mm.
like compound interest, the eighth fucking wonder of the world.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
continues to compound, and that's what people need to do.
Yeah. And people are afraid of starting off as the novice.
Mm,
You know, they want to be the expert straight away. It's like that. No, man. Like give yourself 12 months to learn something and you'll be a lot better than you were at the start. But people, I think, have this fear of being the novice, fear of being a beginner. Um, and it feels really good on a psychological level. I was reading that the actual act of setting big goals sets off the same chemicals in your brain as achieving the goals.
okay.
And so if you find yourself as someone who constantly sets big goals and then does nothing or doesn't achieve them, it's because you're setting these big goals because it feels really good to be like, oh man, in 12 months time, I'm going to be a millionaire and this is what my life's going to be like. And right. Your body starts to envision it and set, and it's like, oh, that feels really great. And tomorrow morning, I'm going to get up at 6 a.m. and I'm going to go to the gym. Then I'm going to come home and I'm going to do some stretches and I'm going to meditate. And then I'm going to drink a glass of water with lemon. And it feels really good to say these things. And then Monday morning, 5 a.m. alarm goes off. You hit the snooze button. You wake up at 8. And you're like, oh, what the fuck? Why didn't I do what I said I was going to do? It's like, because it's like you already masturbated yesterday. You know, you did that all in your head. All in your head. So you got that feeling and then you stopped, right? It's like, nah, man, like just do, set the goal and be really clear on what you can do and what you start with what you can do. Because then it feels good. Oh, I said that I would do something and I did it. Oh, that feels really good. And then you just build and build and build.
Exactly. And I think it's also a society issue of instant gratification. We want everything now. We want to set the goals and we want to achieve it now.
Yeah. Even podcasting. How many people started a podcast, did 5-6 episodes and quit?
Yeah. I think there's
I
stats
know
on
like
that.
I know like 5 or 6 people just within my circle that started a podcast and quit after 5 episodes. It's like Joe Rogan has been podcasting for 10 years with the intention of just podcasting. He just wanted to have conversations with cool people. And then 10 years later gets a $120 million deal with Spotify. So everyone goes, oh, I want a $120 million deal with Spotify, but I'm not going to put 10 years of effort towards that. What's he up to? Like, how many episodes has he done? Like,
God.
oh,
1,200 or something. I don't know. But I love that you're mentioning this because I see the same bloody thing. And for me, this is my 3rd year doing the podcast. I never thought I would have got this far, to be honest. But I've seen so many people along the journey start podcasts, and especially like these people that are, say, influencers on Instagram and they have the following, like, oh yeah, I can start a podcast. It's going to be so successful. And then they start it and it come back to that iceberg analogy again of, hey, I get to sit here in front of a microphone and talk shit with someone. It's going to make me rich. I'm going to get all these downloads. And then they start to notice how much bloody work goes into it.
yeah.
Like I spend hours and hours a week editing, planning, all this kind of stuff that goes into my podcasts. They don't understand that until they jump in and like, oh, fuck, this is too hard. I can't do this.
I think for our podcast, because we've got one at Momentum and we did 20 episodes or so, we're at 30 now. I think maybe 20 or even 23 or 4. We had like 500 downloads in total. And then in the last month, we've gotten 500 downloads. And it's like, oh, cool. It drops in. It's like it took us 25, 26 episodes, but we finally got here. It took us half a year. It took us a year. Oh, okay, cool. We're finally getting the listeners now. Because it can be, if you're doing it for the wrong reasons, if you're doing it for the outcome and the gratification and the money and all that, you don't get that in the first, we didn't get any of that in the first 20 episodes. We didn't get listeners in the first 20, it's like 30 downloads. You're like, man, 30 people have listened to our podcast. Like, what are we doing? But if you're doing it because you love podcasting, you love the conversations you have, and you're like, cool, I just love doing this and I love the process of this. You're just going to keep doing it. And eventually the outcome will follow of, oh, hey, we want to put an ad on your podcast. We'll pay you 10 grand. Oh, fuck. Cool. That's great. But it's like the bonus. It's the bonus
It's
on
a cherry
top
on
of
top. Yeah.
yeah, exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah, like that's why I love podcasting, because I'm so passionate about it. I'm so passionate about being able to sit here, talk to you, build an awesome connection, give so much value to the listeners, and
Mm.
you know, in a lot of times change their lives. Because I've had messages all the times of people saying, "Hey, I listened to your podcast. It really changed my perspective. It really had a massive impact on my life." And it's like, wow, that is awesome that I can sit here for an hour, talk to someone
Mm.
pretty cool, and have that sort of effect on someone's life.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like the cliche, if it affects one person, it's worth it,
And it just it
Yeah.
causes that ripple effect. And now, like, I'm finally starting to get some traction, and I'm having like brands reach out to me, like this brand here, Savory Beverages. They've sent me all their beverages stuff, and they're probably going to come on as a sponsor. And it's like
Yeah.
that's taken me 3 years to get.
Yeah. Yeah, man.
It's a crazy journey, and like Joe Rogan's a big inspiration to me, because I think it was like 5-6 years before he actually started to make some money from podcasting. It's
Yeah.
like, all right, that's cool. Like, imagine where I can be, year 5, year 6, even year 10,
Mm.
if I continue this journey.
Yeah. We actually had Mark Curry, who's the founder
Yeah,
of Savvy. He was in our Momentum mentorship last year. He came through it, and he's a good fella.
he is. Yeah, he's coming on the
Yeah.
podcast next week. We're going to be
Yeah,
chatting all
he's
things.
sending me some stuff actually. How is it?
It's good, bro. I love this. The summer fruits one's really nice.
Summer fruits. I'll make sure he sends me some stuff then. Summer
He
fruits.
just sent me like 2 cases of it yesterday. I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
sweet as. What a legend
Yeah.
of a bloke.
Yeah, he's a good fella. He's a real good fella.
Dude, I want to quickly touch on the sporting background and coming from AFL. When you finished playing, did you have any sort of identity crisis? Because for me, growing up, all it was footy. My goal was to
Mm.
play NRL, and then when I stopped, it's like, okay, like who am I? Who am I? What is my purpose in this world? Because all I've known is footy my whole life. Did you
Mm.
have similar like identity crisis?
Mate, 100%, 100%. And it wasn't conscious at the time because I was 19 years old, and and the trauma of the breakup and the girlfriend and the cheating was so big that I wasn't conscious of the identity crisis that I was going through at the time. Reflecting back, without a doubt, I had one. And as I got further away from sport, like as the years went on, the more I was more aware of like, oh fuck, what am I going to do with my life and what's happening and rah rah rah. So it's actually one of the biggest reasons as to why I do the work that I do now in my Prince to King mentoring program is uh, the lack of male guidance for young men around life in general, but around like, okay, what happens when you're 18 and you were a high level athlete and you didn't get drafted, and then you go to uni as just a result of what society tells you to do, right? You go high school straight into uni or straight into a trade, or maybe you travel for a year and then, but like no one's really preparing you for purpose. No one's preparing you for like, what do you want to do with your life? School only cares about marks, and they only care about you getting into a good uni.
It's just a system,
Okay.
eh?
That's all they really care about. They want you to get good. They don't really care about your purpose in life. Okay. And if you go to a school that does, great. It's starting to shift a little bit, and I went to a great school in Cranbrook, loved my experience, but it was about your school marks. And then school marks translate to the college degree or the uni degree that you're doing. And so for me, 18, 19, finishing sport, not knowing what I wanted to do, I was like, what the fuck's next, And the the best piece of advice that I can give, is just do. It's just do. Okay. Because when you're 18, 19, the world looks like this. It's like, I can do anything. Okay. What do I want to do? I think I want to do sports management, right? That was me. Cool. Now my world looks like that because I'm getting a little bit clearer. And then I was like, okay, no, I really don't like sports management. I went and worked at a sports management firm and I didn't enjoy it. And then so it's like, great, now the world looks like that. And then it was like, cool, I'm going to go work in construction in California. 1 week in, that's not me. Now my world looks like that. Then it was real estate. Nope, didn't like that. 3 months, then it looked like that. Then it was marketing. Nope, don't like marketing. Then it was that. And then all of a sudden, your like what you don't want to do allows you to narrow in on what you do want to do. And then for me, it was, as I said, it was like sports management, um, construction, real estate, marketing, hospitality, like Sony, New Balance, and then I was working in the financial markets. I was trading in the financial markets, and I actually found out about Bitcoin in like 2015, and just was like, "What the fuck's this? Don't know what this is." And I was like, "Ah, I wish I'd invested." But anyway, and then all of a sudden, when I was studying, when I was working in that, my parents encouraged me to do some sort of study as well, and I was like, "All right, I like health and fitness. I'll study this course, health coaching." Just because I enjoy health and fitness. And then halfway through, I was like, oh, I love coaching. This is really cool. And then I got into coaching, and then I realized, oh, I really want to work with men. And then I started a business with men. And then all of a sudden, so the doing allowed me to go, this is what I want to do. And now at 27 years old, which is relatively young to be like, oh, I found my purpose in life. You know, I know what I'm doing from a purpose level. So I'm really fortunate around that. But definitely when I left sport, it was like, what the hell am I going to do? Because similar to you, growing up, it was just, well, I'm pretty sure I'll just play sport. Like, I'm pretty sure that's what I'll do. Yeah. Even though, as I said, I kind of knew when I got to 18, 19 that I knew what it took. You're not mature, or I wasn't mature enough to be like, well, then what else are you going to do, Dylan? It was just like, oh, I'm pretty sure I'll play sport. I'm pretty sure. And then you get to 19, you're like, I'm not playing sport. Oh, what do I do? So I just think the doing aspect, just do something. If you don't like it, cool. Move on to the next thing. Don't like that, move on to that. You'll eventually find your path.
Exactly. Yeah. Just try as many things as possible. And
Mm,
I love that you mentioned it, because for me, I went from school to, I did like a sports management course at TAFE. Then I went into sport and exercise science at uni. Then I went into trade, like for my family business, and I'm in podcasting. I'm doing all these different things. And my parents are always on my back, like, why do you start all these things and then not finish them and continue to
yeah.
change? And it's like, it's a different world now. Like, it's not just get a job and you work that for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
It's try as many things as possible to
Mm,
get closer, as you said, to that purpose and to what you want to do in life.
mm,
Because I think that's another big reason why mental health is so big and so prevalent, and poor mental health, I should say, is so prevalent, because people aren't living in alignment with their purpose. They're
yeah.
working jobs that they hate. They hate getting up in the morning. They're living for
Mm,
the weekends. And the thing is, like, we're all going to die, right? Life's too
yeah.
short. So why the fuck are we living life doing the
Yeah.
things that we hate?
Yeah. There's a really famous, and it's kind of going around on Instagram Reels at the moment, the audio from Alan Watts. And it's something along the lines of, you you go to work in order to get money, in order to continue living life, so that you can go to work in order to get money to continue life. It's like, what the fuck are you doing?
Mm,
You're in this perpetual hamster wheel, this perpetual state of, oh, I need more money to continue doing things that I hate doing. What? Like, wake up, you know? So for me, I was really fortunate that I realized early on, okay, I'm not working for other people. That's not for me. I need to work for myself. So I kind of knew that, and that was my baseline. But I had that baseline because I went and worked for other people, right? If I didn't go and work for other people, you stay stuck in your original thought of, I think I would like to do this. And if you don't go and actually try it, you can get stuck there for 5 years. I'm sure you know people who are like, oh, I really want to do this. I really want to do this. I really want to do this. They never do it. Eventually they do it. And then it's like, dude, you could have found out 5 years ago that
mm,
that's not what you wanted to do. Instead, you're 30 and realizing that that's not what you wanted to do because you sat on that idea for so long. It's like, you get an idea, go and execute. Okay. And so, yeah, I think people 40 hours a week minimum are in jobs that they hate. It's like, no one, obviously you're stressed. Obviously you're depressed. Obviously you're anxious. What's the problem? You hate your job. We know what the problem is. Go and change. Oh, I can't change jobs because of this and because of that and because of this. It's like, hey man, I get it. It's scary changing careers. It's scary not knowing what your future is. But for me, what's scarier is waking up at 70 years old going, I fucking hated 80% of my life. That is way scarier to me than the unknown and the endless possibility of doing something new, of doing something that you enjoy, of doing something that you love, right? If you give me $100,000 a year, but I love what I'm doing versus $1 million a year and I hate what I'm doing every day of the week, every day of the week, fucking every day of the week. But the issue again with society is we've placed such a value on money. So young kids are growing up and all they value is money. And it doesn't matter how we get the money as long as we get the money. And, to potentially say something controversial, but I'm gonna go down this path anyway. Look at the rise in OnlyFans, like look at that. And it's been pushed under this guise of female empowerment, right? There is nothing empowering about selling parts of your body online for money, right? Because you take away the money, you're not doing it. So you're not doing it because it empowers you. You're doing it for the money. Why are you doing it for the money? Because you value money so much that you will compromise on your values, that you will do things that are not healthy and are not from a healthy place. And that's just one example. But that's why we've seen the rise in things like that. Why do we see the rise in to shift it away from something potentially controversial, but the like pranksters or the Jake Pauls of the world. Like Jake Paul is not a good role model for 90% of how you look at his life. You can angle it in like, okay, here's a kid that really heavily believed in himself and went after his dreams and achieved his dreams, and like, well done. There's the 10% that you can angle it in like, okay, he's a good role model. He's a fucking idiot. He's a moron, but people look up to him, people value him, and people will continue to talk about him because he makes a lot of money.
Yep.
And we value money now. And it's like, you have to shift the values. Again, back to like me coming to Hawaii, my values shifted away from hustling and grinding and making a lot of money to like, I want to enjoy the 16 hours that I'm awake. That's what I value now. I want to enjoy that.
Yeah. That's powerful. Listeners, take that in because it's so true. And that is a big thing I push as well, because I don't want to get to 80, 90, 100 if I'm lucky enough and look back at my life with regret, right? For me, my biggest fear in life is having regret. I do not want that. And a lot of what we've just been talking about comes back to our self-worth, right? We're placing all our self-worth on this external validation, this external achievement, all these external things, instead of focusing on this internal fulfillment.
Yeah.
We've gone away from that. And as I said, we're working jobs, we're doing shit that we don't want to do for all the external stuff to look good for people that we don't even care about, really. We get in the house, the car, the boat for our keeping up the Joneses bullshit, right?
Yeah.
Fuck that. Internal fulfillment. And that's a big thing that, I've been implementing into my life, because I guess growing up, it was the money. Let's do all this stuff for money, all the external achievement. Let's go play in the NRL. You're going to be famous, all this kind of crap, right? For me now, it's what can I do every day to feel the feelings that I want to feel, the internal fulfillment. And when you have that switch, man, life you be present and you just enjoy every moment that you're alive. Now, don't get me wrong, you're going to have bad days, right? But I think that's where, those 6 things that we mentioned before come into play. If you're doing them every day, it's going to help you so much.
Yeah. If you have meaning in your life and meaning to your life, you're able to handle so much more. And what I mean by that is the person who has no meaning, when faced with difficult things, will crumble so much faster than the guy or the man or woman who has real meaning in their life facing the same obstacles. Because when I wake up and I have a bad day and or I wake up and my mental health isn't great and I'm feeling off, what I'm leaning back on or what my baseline is, and this is away from the good habits that I've developed, but my baseline is like this real deep, meaningful work that I get to do every day. I get to mentor young men in their lives to become better men. All right, I'm going to be okay. I'm going to get through this versus someone without that meaning. And the meaning can look like whatever it looks like to you, but without that meaning, you wake up and you hit with a challenge. You're like, well, why the fuck do I want to embrace this challenge or face this challenge? What am I doing it for? Like, why? What's the purpose of this? Because you've got no meaning anchoring you in resilience. And that's what the meaning can do. It can anchor you in resilience.
Definitely agree. Dude, I want to jump into masculinity. I think it's a very important topic. It's a bit controversial in the fact that I'm going to bring up toxic masculinity, right? This new word that's going around, and masculine is so toxic now. And I think there's two sides of the spectrum. You know, we've got that old style of, tough, suck it up, don't talk about your feelings and emotions. Then we got the other side of, I'm going to show all my emotions, but not be strong kind of thing. Like, what is your take on the whole toxic masculinity? And then we'll back that up with what is masculinity to you? Like, what should it look like kind of thing?
Yeah. How long do you have? Do you got another 3-4 hours? Because
we got plenty of time, bro.
So I've got a real issue with the term toxic masculinity, and I'll explain why. First of all, if you take the definition of toxic masculinity, you Google it, and you go, what's the definition of toxic masculinity? I have no issue with the definition that comes up. And it's something along the lines of actions and beliefs that keep men boxed into an idea of what it means to be a man, but they're unhealthy beliefs or actions. So you take that definition, and I don't have a problem with that, because like anything, there are going to be things that if we believe to be true and they're not healthy for us, they'll keep us caged in. And there are things that are traditionally masculine that do not serve men anymore. And you mentioned one of them, the tough, no vulnerable, move on. I agree with that. I have an issue with toxic masculinity because when someone says it, I have no idea what you mean by it. If you're just using the term toxic masculinity, what do you mean by that? And everybody's going to have a different answer to it. So I have a massive issue with it for that reason, because it has shifted in some, and I would argue most conversations, away from that definition to masculinity in itself is toxic. And that is something that I will fight tooth and nail until my dying breath to destroy that ideology, because masculinity in itself is incredibly positive, healthy, and necessary. And that's what I enjoy propping up. So I enjoy propping up masculinity in its healthy forms and talking about it in that regard, for the reason that if you just use the term toxic masculinity, I don't know what you mean. And it's shifted, at least in what I'm viewing and my bias, because it is a bias. I see it as it's been weaponized to destroy masculinity. It's been weaponized to attack men. And I mean that. I don't say that as an angry man who's like, oh, the rise of women is impacting me, and oh, fuck feminism, and I don't say it in that space. I say it as like what I'm reading and what I'm seeing. It's now transitioned to the most part to attacking masculinity in men, and I won't stand for that. I won't use it. So you'll never see me use the term toxic masculinity for that very reason. But I like to preface it with the general definition isn't that bad. The other reason that I don't use it is because I don't like the word toxic in itself from a place of healing. And if I'm trying to heal someone and I'm calling parts of themselves toxic, it comes with a layer of shame, and you can't heal or move through shame. Shame doesn't hold any purpose other than to keep you stuck in whatever it is and to feel bad about yourself. Shame is that I am a bad person instead of, oh, I've done something that I shouldn't have done, or I've done something bad. Shame is like an identity of like, I'm a shitty person, and that there's no place for that. So that's also why I don't use that term. I use the term wounded masculinity, because wounded masculinity, we can heal. We can look at their wounds that are causing whatever the behavior is, and we can go, cool, let's heal. Let's heal whatever the wound was. Oh, you're when you were 10 years old, your girlfriend broke up with you, and that caused you to really harbor bitter and resentment towards women. It's not toxic. You're stuck as a 10-year-old holding hurt and resentment and bitterment towards women, and you heal the boy and the man will appear. And it's one of my favorite quotes. You heal the boy and the man will appear. So when we can look at it from a wounded place and address it, then men can step into their masculinity and step into healthy masculinity, which is good for everyone. You have healthy, strong, resilient, heart-led or heart-connected men in society. It's good for it. It's not bad for anyone. It's good for everyone. And so that's why I'm so passionate about the space, working with men through Momentum, working with young men through my Prince to King program, is because it fires me up. Like, there's conversations, again, whatever percentage you can argue for or against, but I think it's the majority of conversations now are around attacking men. And I won't stand for it. There's no benefit in attacking men. What there is a benefit in is holding men accountable and looking to heal whatever they're going through. It's just like it is with women. I hold women accountable and heal women, like this, coming from a place of compassion and empathy and coming together. And it's not a men versus women thing. It's like, no, we lift both people up, and as we lift both sexes up, we step into a much healthier, positive society.
I agree 100%. It's like that yin yang. We need that feminine, we need that masculine energy, right? And we have so many wounded boys in adult bodies, and
100%.
they can't function properly in society. And I think that's where the whole toxic masculinity comes from, because let's be honest, a lot of them are still boys that have all these wounds. They don't know how to, express their emotions and feelings, which could lead them to drugs, alcohol, abuse, all these kind of things. So coming from a place from compassion and empathy, like you said, and helping them to really heal, that's what's going to solve the issue, not just throwing the word toxic masculinity, because like, what context are you saying that in? Like, people are just chucking it around, and like, what meaning does it have, kind of thing. And it's definitely similar to when you're talking about mental health, why there's such a stigma, because people have labeled, like, they've misinterpreted mental health and mental illness. And everyone just says mental health, but we all have mental health, but not all of us have mental illness. It's that misinterpretation, which has then created that stigma.
Yeah.
Is why no one wants to talk about it. But in reality, we all have mental health.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, man. It's it's really important that we focus on solutions as well. I think in the masculinity conversation, there's a lot of like finger pointing and a lot of blame and a lot of like, don't do this or don't be this. And there's very little solutions. So, if we don't want men to bottle up their feelings, you don't just tell them, you wouldn't tell a little boy, don't bottle up your feelings. Don't. Because he is like, well, can you teach me how I can like talk about my emotions and help me navigate that? And if you're a half decent human, you will, right? We need to take the same mentality with men. It's like, you want to improve society, you want to improve the lives of men, teach them what they need to do, have compassion and empathy, and come together and go, okay, cool, man, like, you're really struggling with your mental health at the moment. Here are some solutions that we can work on. Here is what you can do to better yourself and better your life. If we're focused on the problem and just attacking, what you're probably going to do is you're going to entrench that person more in their beliefs and their thing, because they don't, like, you're attacking me, so I'm going to immediately put up a wall and a shield if you attack me, rather than being like, hey man, like, I noticed that on Friday and Saturdays, like, you're drinking quite a bit, and it's been 6 months of, like, you've been going pretty hard every weekend. Is everything okay? I just want to check in with you, brother. Like, what's going on, man? Is everything okay? And he might be like, mate, like, what are you talking about? It's fine. Like, I just enjoy drinking, rah rah. And you're like, okay, man, I just want you to know, like, I'm here for you. And I know that when I get really stressed out, I start to drink a little bit more, and talk about your own issues. Vulnerability breeds vulnerability. And so that conversation, give me that conversation 10 out of 10 times, instead of like, oi, fuckhead, stop drinking. Or like, wow, you're being toxic because you're drinking a lot. Like, that person's gonna be like, cool, you're not my friend, or cool, you don't have any solutions, or cool, you're just attacking me. And also, fuck you, don't tell me how to live my life. I'm gonna keep doing this. We need to look at, like, what are we trying to achieve here? We're trying to achieve healthy masculinity. Great. Then let's do things that achieve that, because this toxic masculinity debate is not leading to healthy masculinity.
Exactly. It's just pushing it deeper and deeper. And we
Yeah,
need to start having those below surface conversations. And as you said, it might be a mate that's drinking a lot and you've just letting him know, like, hey, I'm here for you. And then you open up and be vulnerable. In that instance, he may not open up to you, but a few days later, he might come to you and be like, hey, like, you were right, I'm struggling. And because you took the time to open up and be vulnerable, now you've built that deeper connection and you guys can talk about it and work it out.
absolutely, man. Absolutely. 100%.
For you, I wanted to ask, like, what does healthy masculinity look like?
Mm. To sum it up as quickly as I can, it's to be of service. That's what it looks like. It's like to be of service. You think of just the great men, whether that's in your own life or the great men throughout history, or on a greater level. It's like they're out there serving people. They're out there being of service. And so for me, that's what really healthy masculinity looks like. It's being of service. It's being a protector. It's being resilient and heart led or heart connected, the balance of backbone and emotional intelligence, not just one or the other, not just being the old school way of like, fucking get on with it and rah, rah, rah. It's like, no, you need to have resilience in some areas of your life, like when work gets tough, or when your father dies, or like, whatever. It's like, yeah, you might need some resilience here, and you might need to step up and take on whatever challenges you're facing. And then, okay, you've just dealt with all the practicalities of your father's funeral, and you've just dealt with the death, whatever. Now, like, dude, yeah, cry, man. Your dad's dead. Like, that's really hard. And like, come here, give me a hug, man. I'll cry with you. Like, that's tough. That's the healthy masculinity. It's like the duality of both. And I think the old, I kind of view it as like this necessary, whether it's necessary or not, I'm not sure, but kind of how everything works is we go from one extreme to the other, and then we find a good middle ground. And we had the extreme within men of not talking about their stuff, and now we've gone to too far where we lack a lot of resilience now in the younger generations. And I think we're entering that age or that time frame where we are talking more about healthy masculinity and the balance of the two. And that's where we want to be. It's like, hey man, you need to be able to take on life's challenges, because they're coming for you, whether you're ready or not. However, vulnerability and being in touch with your emotions will actually allow you to be more resilient. And that's the missing piece. It's like, if you consistently stay in the backbone piece, if you consistently like get on with life and just move on and rah, rah, you're not actually allowing yourself to reflect, because it's too painful to reflect, because it's too vulnerable to reflect. And if you're not reflecting, you're not learning. And if you're not learning, you're not
Growing,
becoming
yeah.
more resilient, right? Because if you learn more, you're able to go, oh, I don't need to do that, and I can do this, and cool. And as a result, you come up against the same challenge and you've learned how to deal with it. So it's actually critical in being resilient is the emotional intelligence, the connection to your emotions, part of the conversation. It's crucial.
Definitely. And people seem to forget or don't realize that vulnerability is actually a strength, right? It
Mm,
takes a lot more strength to be vulnerable and open up than to bottle it up.
definitely, man. Hey, man, how you doing? Good, thanks. How are you? Yeah, good, thanks. Did you watch the footy? Yeah, man, it was a great game. No strength necessary. Hey,
Mm.
man, how you doing? Dude, I'm battling a bit actually. Oh, okay. Do you want to talk about it? Yeah, man, I actually would love to. Fuck, dude. Courageous, brave, strong. Those are the words that come to mind when I have conversations with men like that. That takes a lot of courage and bravery.
It just takes like breaking, you got to break the ice. It is hard, but once you break that ice, you feel more and more comfortable every time. And it is hard because some men may not have safe environments to open up.
Mm.
And it can be your friend circle, it can be a professional help like a psychologist. Man, there's even people on social media. Like you'll be surprised how many people that you can talk to.
Yeah. Mate, in Australia, you can go and get a mental health plan from a
Mm.
GP that'll give you 10 free sessions. Australia's got a great healthcare. Go to your GP, get that mental health care plan, and go get your 10 free sessions. Start there. If you don't have a friendship group where you feel safe, and then my next piece of advice is find a friendship group that you feel safe in. And also give you something else to kind of contradict that, but give your friends the benefit of the doubt. If you're opening up to your friends on a Friday night when all the boys are together, they're not in a good headspace to kind of counsel you or to hold space for you. They're ready to go out and enjoy their night. So my advice is actually give your mates the benefit of the doubt and say, hey, hey mate, can we go for a coffee? I have something to talk to you about that I'd love for you to kind of listen to and give me advice, or even if you don't want advice, but just I've got something that I need to talk to you about. Do you have 30 minutes on Saturday morning to grab a coffee and go for a walk? Then your mate's going, oh, something's up. And as I get to this conversation, I'm prepared that something's up, versus the Friday night, hey boys, we're all fucking drinking and we're about to go out. My life's a mess and I'm unhappy. Like your friends are going to be like, they could be the best friends in the world. They might not know how to handle that on a Friday night after 6 beers. So
Mhm.
give your mates the benefit of the doubt as well.
Yeah, that's exactly what I push as well. Is like asking for that permission for you to share, because if you just unleash and unload on them, they're gonna be gobsmacked and be like, oh fuck, this guy's just I don't know how to handle this. But if you
Mm,
prepare them and go, hey, as you said, let's go for a coffee, I need to talk about something, they'll be more prepared and be more open to be able to listen and help
yeah.
where they can.
Yep. 100%, man. The asking for permission is big. It's a big point.
Mm. There was this Joe Rogan thing I heard ages ago. It was saying strong men build good times create weak men create bad times. It's like that cycle. What's your kind of
Yep.
take on that?
I I agree with it. I agree with it. I just think that people don't have a good understanding of what strong man and weak man means in that regard. Um, but I think we're kind of in the middle of that cycle right now around the weak man. Look to our leaders, and it's not even necessarily a political thing because, or like I'm not biased one way or the other. It's like all 99% of political men and women right now fucking suck, and they're not good leaders, and you wouldn't want them running your company, and you wouldn't want them coaching your children because of the values that they instill. And so we're in the middle of that, like, and this idea of weak people or weak men, it's not like um it doesn't mean weakness in that you can be physically strong uh or physically powerful. It's this weakness of the story of the bitter man coming into power. And to kind of give a really like uh practical analogy, it's like we all had that teacher, that you looked at and you were like, you got 1 ounce of power and you abused it. And that teacher that was like always on your ass, and you looked at them and you were like, you like have no idea what to do with this power, like because teachers have power, especially in school. You listen to them, and if you don't, you get into trouble and you get detentions and you do all these things. And everyone has that one or multiple teachers they looked at you go, you were fucking bullied at school, or you were miserable before you became a teacher, and then you got that power and you abused it. That's the weak man. It's the one who is really bitter about society and then abuses whatever power they get, or looks to attack other people. That's the weak man. That's the man that creates difficult times. The strong man is actually the one that stands up to the tyrants, that stands up against what is wrong, and they stand up. That's the strong man. It's not the strong man is the it's not that the strong man is the tyrant or the dominant one. It's the opposite. It's the weak man is. The strong man is the one that stands up against those things, those ideologies, and faces them and says, hey, I will face the threat at the door and I will take care of my family or my community or whatever. And that's the strong man, and we just don't see a lot of those in society anymore. Like it's really it's really sad to see that crumbling of the strong man. But as the cycle will repeat itself, these weak men will have kids, and the kids will be born into shitty times, and those shitty times will create strong people, and those strong people will lead us into a better age. It's just, how do we go about not reverting backwards into that other thing? And I really think it is stepping out of our comfort zone and teaching kids to be comfortable, uncomfortable. That's, I think, the solution. Because look at how good our lives are, man. Like, life's pretty good. It's pretty comfortable,
Definitely.
So why would I take on responsibility? You have to teach people why they should.
Definitely. And then the pandemic hits and we don't know what to do because it's adversity.
Yep. Yeah, man. Yeah.
And I guess put it into a bit of a perspective on my point of view when it comes to weak men. Like, you see, say, kids that get bullied or don't have a good upbringing, then they go join, say, like the police force, so then get that power, and then they become so egotistic and stuff like that. That's kind of like the weak men.
Yeah, definitely. And to what do you do with the kid that's getting bullied, right? What do you do with that? Well, you turn him into a strong man. Like, you give him confidence, you give him tools, you educate, you teach, and you go, hey man, like, here's what you do when you're coming up against these things. And then they're able to develop themselves into a confident, heart-led man. That's what you do. You don't leave them to their own tools or their own devices. You don't leave them to their own devices because they don't know what the fuck to do. And so they just develop more resentment and more bitterness and go in the path that you mentioned. They get to a place where, like, oh, I'm at a place now where I can say fuck you to the world and do something with that fuck you. You look at I love storytelling as I do this work, and I step more into this work, because through stories you're able to find meaning. That is how we find meaning, is through stories. And you take the Lion King, okay? Scar is the weak man in the story. He's the weak, bitter brother who got defeated and is not the king of the jungle, king of Africa, or king of the tribe. Yeah, Mufasa is the strong man. He's the one that's got the values and that we look to and we go, wow, what a man, and what do the weak, bitter men do, right? He fucking killed his brother for power. You take the storytelling origins back to the original story. It's actually the original story of Cain and Abel in the Bible, right? Which I'm not sure if you're familiar with that story or not, but Cain and Abel was a story of two brothers, and Cain becomes resentful of his brother Abel because Abel is in God's favor. And as a result, he kills Abel. And then God smites Cain, and that's the mark of Cain that he has to walk around with on his forehead for the rest of eternity, showing him that that's what he did. That's the story. It's the weak man or the weak brother, the weak person attacking the strong one. And we see that play out time and time again. It's why we need strong men. It's why society needs it, because the strong man protects us from the weak, from the bitter, from the resentful, from the people who do real harm to us.
And that's the work you're doing, right? Working with these young men and trying to prevent
Mm.
them from becoming weak men. You want to build strong men.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. You and you can look at it in any area, like any area of life that you want to take. Who are the guys that hate women? They're the ones who can't like have no social skills with women. They're the ones that fucking hate women. It's like you teach that man how to communicate with women, how to relate to women, how to court women, how to date them, how to eventually get a wife. They're not going to they're going to transition from this bitter, angry, resentful man into like, oh, I actually do love women, but because I couldn't get what I loved, I had to hate it. So you can take it across any sphere of life and see how the weak man plays out versus the strong man. And the strong man comes out on top every time. We want and need strong men. And as you said, it's the work that I'm doing in my Prince to King mentorship program with, boys 14 years and up. It's like giving them the tools, giving them the solutions, giving them the guidance, challenging them on things, supporting them on other things, and saying, hey, you can be this amazing man in society that contributes and is connected to his heart and is resilient. You just need someone to guide you along the way, like we all did. For me, I grew up in a culture of men everywhere that were really good role models. So, and I had a great father that was a really good role model, and I had a great mother who was a really good role model. So that's what I'm trying to instill in my programs with my Prince to King work. And pretty similarly in my work with Momentum, which is for men 30 years and up, we're trying to give them the tools in order to navigate their lives, in order to become better versions of themselves, in order to become better men. Because I'll say it 100 million times, strong, good, heart-led men are good for society and necessary for society.
Yes, definitely agree. I've seen something you posted earlier, the King's Code. A man without a code is not a man at all. You want to kind of touch on that a bit?
Yeah. What are you willing to die for? Like, what are you willing to die for? I imagine your daughter, your
Yeah.
partner, and that's where you'd start. What else are you willing to die for? What are you willing to stand for and fight for? And I think if you don't have some sort of code that you live by, you will become a kite in the wind, and you'll just fucking float around in society, and you're not going to, what's the other cliche is, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for everything.
Yeah.
And to bring it to a really like present example is what's happened the last 2 years. And regardless of what your opinions, well, it kind of does come down to your opinions, but regardless of your opinions, you need to know when you will stand up for your own rights. Okay. Like, what is that moment that you go, okay, enough is enough? And I don't think men or women know, because they don't have that conversation where they go, okay, if my government does X, Y, and Z, that's enough for me. And you've seen over the last 2 years, I don't want to make it political, but it's just such a good example. And I'll just pose it in a question. It's like, okay, 2 weeks to stop the curve. All right, we're okay with that. Okay, 2 weeks to stop the curve. We don't really know what's going on. We're okay with that. Okay, I'm not going to fight that. All right, then it's another month. And you're like, okay, well, we're still not really sure. Okay, I'm okay with another month. And then it's this, and then it's this, and then it's this, and then it's this, and then it's 2 years, and then it's to rejoin society, you need to do this. And so rather than kind of saying where I made my stand, it's better to just ask the question, where do you make your stand? When do you say, fuck off, this is where I am, and you're not taking another inch further? And as a result of a society with no code, we've seen what's happened over the last 2 years. When is enough enough? When will you make a stand in any area of your life? Just one more fry, just one more burger. Oh, I'll sleep in today and I'll work out tomorrow. When are you going to make a stand in your life? And when are you going to stand for something and go, actually, I'm sick of being fat, and I'm sick of being depressed, and I'm sick of being unhappy, and I'm sick of going to work for a boss that I fucking hate. I'm sick of this, and I'm going to make a stand in my life to live my life based on a code. And then you figure out what that code is. And so a man without a code is no man at all, because he doesn't stand for shit. And if you don't stand for anything, what good are you? What are you here for? Why are you here? What are you doing? I can do whatever I want with you. You don't stand for anything? Cool. Come over here and do this. Yes, sir. Come do this. Yes, sir. Come and do this. Yes, sir. All of a sudden, you look at the 20th century. The 20th century is the greatest example of not making a stand. Look at what happened in Nazi Germany. Yeah. Do we have any history books left? Like, do we want to pick up history and learn from our mistakes? How do you get to Nazi Germany? You get there by having no code, by not standing up for something, or by standing up for something too late. So you have to develop some sort of code. Now, whatever that is, that can be up to you. You get to develop your code. You want your code to be family? Great. You want your code to be money? Maybe that's great. Maybe that's not. But you have to have a code and live by it. And then it's kind of similar to like finding your purpose. Maybe you develop a code that's directed towards money, and maybe 2 years later you realize that's not a good code, and you transition your code to something else. And then you realize, oh, I can actually make my code even stronger, and you develop it even further. Like, but start somewhere. Start with something. Stand for fucking something.
Empowering, bro. So what I get from that is the code is essentially the values that you live by and what you're willing to kind of die for, what you stand up for.
Yeah, definitely, man. Definitely. And start with the extremes. Immediately I went to your daughter and your partner. Like, you'll die for that. And most people will be like, yeah, I'll die for that. Cool. Like, that's somewhere that you can easily start with. But where else? Where else can you bring the code into your life? Like, a great quote is like, it's like 87% of people say that they'll die for their family, but how many of you will live for your family? It's easy to jump in front of a bullet for someone you love. That's fucking easy, in my opinion. But getting up every day, working hard on your purpose or your passion, working out in the gym, eating healthy, those are really hard things, but they show that you stand for something. One of the easiest ways to gauge someone's character, and I genuinely don't care how superficial this sounds, but looking at are they healthy? If I look at you and you're unhealthy, you've told me everything I need to know about you. You're lazy. Okay. If you're lazy in one area, you're going to be lazy in other areas. You don't just get to pick and choose where you're lazy. And that's not saying you need to be fucking Arnold Schwarzenegger, but it's saying like, I can look at how you treat your body, and I can get everything I need to know from how you treat every other area of your life. And there's going to be exceptions, and there's going to be exceptions to that rule. And there's going to be like people who are insanely successful in business and treat their body like shit. Of course, there's going to be exceptions, but it's a good indicator of a man's character, a man's values, and a man's code is how he treats himself. I think in my code, the first thing that I put is healthy in body, mind, and spirit. You start there with that code of, are you exercising? Are you eating well? Are you spending time alone? And that third piece is super important, spending time alone, like with your own thoughts and developing, yourself. Fuck, it's important.
It's powerful, bro. That time alone allows you to fucking soft reflect, eh?
Yeah. Yeah, man. Yeah. One of the things we didn't kind of get into it today in the podcast, but I actually suffer from or I deal with depression and anxiety. And one of the reasons that one of the things that I talk about with in regards to the mental health conversation around men is we don't spend enough time alone self-reflecting, and so we actually don't know how we are. So when I say how are you and you say good, it might not be that you're lying or that you're hiding. It actually might be you've got no fucking clue how you are, because you wake up, you get on your phone as you're taking a shit, then you go and you make a coffee and you get in the car and you listen to music, and then you get to work and you work until 5 p.m. and then you get back in the car and you listen to music, you get home, you watch something on your phone while you're making dinner, then you sit down, you watch TV while you're eating dinner, and then you get into bed, you watch Netflix for 2 hours and you fall asleep. You have no idea how you are, and that was my life in the 6 months leading up to my depression and anxiety. That was exactly what my life was. It was like, I'm not spending any time in self-reflection. And so that's super important.
Yeah, and I guess it's uncomfortable sitting there with your own thoughts for a lot of
Yeah,
people.
man.
That's why they don't do it. They mask it with music, Netflix, working, all this kind of stuff, so they don't have to face the reality of their own thoughts.
Or solution to a problem.
Exactly. And we've been talking about masculinity, but I want to jump over to quickly what the importance of women, the feminine, empowering men to
Mm,
open up and be vulnerable. Because for me, for so long, I never felt comfortable opening up to my partner until we created that, like she created that safe environment for me to feel comfortable enough opening up. So,
yeah.
how important is it to you for the feminine, the women, to empower us men?
100%. And I would use a different word to empower. I would use what you said before around safety and
Yeah.
security. Um, when men feel safe and secure, they'll open up. Men don't have a communication problem. Men have a safety and security problem, and women play a massive part. They do. Like, if I don't feel, if you're a woman listening to this and you're like 30 and you've had 3 or 4 different boyfriends, and every boyfriend hasn't opened up to you, and you're like, fuck, men they just don't open up and they're not in tune with their communication. What's the one uh what's the one what's that term? I'm forgetting. What is the one consistent factor in each one of your relationships? It's you. You're the consistent factor. So maybe you aren't creating the safe space for your man to open up, especially if you've had 4 or 5 boyfriends and you're saying the same thing. It's probably you. And so then, and it's not to shame or to blame or to put responsibility on you, but it is to say that you can play a part in helping men communicate their emotions more. I won't open up to a stranger. Why won't I open up to a stranger? I have no idea how they're going to handle it. And if I don't know how they're going to handle it, it means that there's a potential that they will handle it poorly and then hurt me in my vulnerability. Similar to a relationship, if I either don't know how you're going to handle it, or I have a track record of seeing women handle it poorly, then I'm not going to do it. Why? Because I don't want to get hurt. So you create the safety. You'll be amazed at how quickly and how well men can articulate what they're going through. You'll be amazed. It's actually a myth that I've had to face myself. I used to think that men couldn't communicate and didn't communicate. I was like, no, we communicate really fucking well when we feel safe and secure in doing so. And I think that women say they want men to open up, and they say that they want their man to be vulnerable with them. And the doing aspect and the holding of space for men is very different to that. It's very different to it. It's really easy to say, oh, I really want my man to open up to me. And then he comes home from a really stressful day at work and you crack the shits at him because he's stressed. He ain't going to fucking open up to you. He ain't, right? Versus like you noticing that your partner's stressed out, and instead of you getting on his case about X, Y, and Z, you go, hey babe, like, how was your day? You seem a little bit stressed. And it might take time. It might take 3, 4, 5, 6 months of you checking in with him. But I guarantee the consistent checking in, or the consistent like, hey, I just want you to know, like, I am here for you. And then when he does open up, you are like, oh wow, that's tough. Like, do you want advice or do you just want to talk? Oh, I just want to talk. Okay, cool. Like, I'm here for you. And you just listen. Like it's harder. It is hard to do, which is why people don't do it.
Mm.
Like it's difficult to not. I'm not sitting here saying it's really easy to do, but I really think that a lot of women are delusional in the fact that they think they hold space well for their man. And I would challenge a lot of women and say you don't do it well. And that's okay. And I'm not here to shame you or challenge you, but I'm saying here's what you do. Here's the solution to that. It's like when he is stressed out, when he's angry and upset and going through these emotions, and maybe for the first time he is having to deal with them and communicate them in a relationship, maybe it's time for you to be the bigger person and take a step back and go, oh, fuck, okay, my partner's freaking out right now and yelling at me, and that's not okay. However, there's a reason for the anger. There's a reason for this outburst. There's a reason for the stress. And if I can, and I've had a really good day today, so I can be in a place where I hold space for you. Oh, fuck, babe, I'm really sorry that I immediately told you to go and take the bins out when you just got home. You're right. I should have checked in with you and seen how you're doing. How was your day? And he might still be a fucking bull because he's riled himself up, but maybe he calms down. Maybe, okay, thank you for checking in with me. Like, okay, cool. And so holding space for our men is really important, and it's difficult to do. It's difficult to practice, but it's like anything. You practice it, you get really good at it.
Exactly. And I think a lot of it comes down to women are not used to men opening up. So when they try to, they're like, oh, what the fuck's happening here? I'm just going to crack the shits. And then it just pushes the man away.
Yeah, definitely, man. Definitely. I think recognizing that the vulnerability will look different to your own vulnerability. For women, I think it can look pretty easy in terms of, hey, babe, I've had a really bad day today. I'm super stressed out, and the communication's pretty good and clear. And so men can be like, oh, cool, like you've had a bad day and let me take care of you. For men, the communication might not be that clear cut, and it might not be that asking for help, and it might not be the same as what your vulnerability looks like. It can look like different things. So understanding what it looks like is also really important. I think within my own relationship, when we get into heated arguments or when we're going back and forth, some of my frustration has come out of like, you've asked me how I'm doing and I've told you, and you didn't like my answer. And then it's resulted into an argument. It's like, that's not holding space. Holding space is no matter what my answer is, you're like, okay, I've decided to hold space for you. So I'm going to hold space for you now in this moment. And once you've done that, sure, then you can express what you're going through. That, hey, just want to let you know that when you mentioned X, Y, and Z, it actually made me feel uncomfortable. Do you have the capacity to hold space for me now? Or can we come back to this in an hour? And I'd love to communicate what I'm going through now. But you don't take what the man said and then go, oh, that makes me feel like shit, so I'm going to get angry and I'm going to communicate how that makes me feel straight away, because you're not holding space for the man to communicate, and I'm really fortunate that I do this work, so I'm really fucking good at it, and understanding that my partner doesn't do the work. And so I, the other day, had to actually explain to her, this is what holding space looks like. We got into an argument, we were arguing, and it was like, babe, you wanted me to communicate how I'm going through. Did you not? Yeah, I did. But then let me communicate and let me talk about my experience. And then we can talk about your experience. But you don't get to talk about your experience whilst I'm trying to communicate mine. That's not holding space, because one person has to hold the container. So if I'm communicating what I'm going through, and then you communicate how that feels, one of two things are going to happen. One, I'm going to arc back up and we're going to get into an argument because both people aren't feeling heard and both people aren't feeling safe. Or two, I'll go, okay, well, fuck my feelings. I need to go and hold space for you, and I'll hold space for you. And then it's like this, well, I don't have a safe relationship to talk about my emotions and my experience, because every time I do, it triggers my partner into what she's going through, and then I have to hold space for what I've just triggered, and then my shit doesn't get dealt with. And that is really fucking common. So you say you want a man to open up, but you don't. Because what happens when I open up and I tell you something you don't want to hear? You get fucking triggered real quick. Yeah. So it's hard. Like I'm saying this, and it's like it still plays out in my relationship. You know, we still have arguments, and I still sometimes fuck up, and she sometimes fucks up, and but like over a long period of time, or over communicating and having an open dialogue and holding space for one another, it's beautiful. You know, every time coming out of those discussions or those arguments, once we've resolved them and once we've come together, it just comes back to love. It just comes back to this beautiful place that we're able to like come back together and build a relationship off of. And I know I've ranted for this, but I'm really passionate about it, and I hope it's making sense. Back to what you mentioned at the start, was we want immediate gratification, and how that plays out in our relationship is we want easy relationships. And so what happens is, as soon as a relationship gets difficult, we go, fuck this. This isn't what a relationship's meant to look like. Goodbye. And we bail out. And it's like, you're never gonna, like, do you want a conscious relationship? Yeah, I want a conscious relationship. Conscious relationship looks like holding space for one another, talking about what each person is going through, having these really difficult conversations, and then at the end of it, coming back to love and safety and security. And that's what a conscious relationship is. But that's a lot harder than the surface level relationships we idolize on Instagram. Oh man, Nick's with his girlfriend and kid, and they're in Bali living the life. Like, see, their relationship's so easy. My relationship's really hard. It's like, no, his relationship takes a lot of work as well. You just don't see that. You don't see, he's not live streaming the argument he's having with his partner, right? Dylan isn't live streaming these conversations so that the world can see what his actual relationship looks like. No, he's taking photos of his pregnant partner in a sunset in Hawaii, you know? Like, so there's also that aspect that plays into it.
Definitely. Relationships take a lot of work, and especially the first few years of my relationship, it was that surface level, and we always used to fight, and we never used to come back to love, right? Love that you mentioned, like, one, we're human, we're not perfect, we're gonna fuck up.
Yeah.
Two, we got to have that self-awareness and realize when we do fuck up. And the big one is always coming back to love, because there's this saying of anger knocked on the door, love answered, anger wasn't there anymore. Always,
I love that.
always come back to love.
Love that.
Love is the most powerful emotion, I believe.
You can, every interaction or every decision you make is either leaning into love or leaning away from love. You know, are you going to lean into love and choose to sit there in your anger and your discomfort and your hurt and have the conversation with your partner? Or are you going to lean out of love, slam the door and leave? What are you going to do? You know, leaning in or leaning out? And every time you lean in, it gets more and more beautiful, more and more connected to love, more and more like, this is amazing. What a relationship I have.
And that's how you build strong, bloody relationships, eh?
100%, man, 100%. I think the biggest blessing for me is this baby that brought me and my partner together, because something that I really struggled with was the wandering eye, and the like, oh, but what if life's better? Or like, oh, I'm 1 foot in, 1 foot out of a relationship. It was like, there it is. I tell my partner, I'm like, you want to divorce me? Just fucking kill me, because I ain't going anywhere. Like, I'm here. I'm 2 feet in and we're going the distance, you know? And I truly believe that when two people have that mentality, I don't think anything can come between that. You know, I really think when two people are like showing up to do the work within the relationship, you'll go the distance. I don't see that relationship kind of going elsewhere, you know? I truly believe that.
Definitely agree. And I think it's not to say as well, like, as men, we're going to be attracted to other women, right? It's we're animals at the end of the day, but there's a difference between being attracted and taking action. You can be attracted to someone, doesn't mean you have to take action. Like, you're wholeheartedly in your relationship with your partner, but hey, that person over there is attractive. Doesn't mean I want to go there.
Yeah, definitely. One thing that I've really fortunate with my partner now, and saying that we've had multiple conversations, because it really it made her feel really uncomfortable, and she was like, I don't fucking like this, and I had to communicate a couple of times why. But one thing is, like, for me, what's important for me and for my relationship is communicating what you just said. I feel really good when I'm able to communicate within my relationship. Oh, fuck, the waitress, she's pretty good looking, or like, oh, that girl over there, she's a good looking girl or whatever, and still being respectful. It's not like, oh fuck, babe, I would give it to her. Like, no, that's not what I'm doing. But for me, it's important because when I don't communicate it, it turns into like this dirty little secret. It turns into shame. And when shame sits there, it manifests
You
and
create
and
these
it
little stories in
builds.
your head.
Yeah, and it builds up, and it's like, oh, this little fucking secret that I checked out the waitress, and like, oh, and it builds and it festers and it grows, and the more shame we've got, the more we keep it secret, right? And so speaking it is really important, and it also plays out like um, telling my partner when I've gone and had a wank, like that's important, because I don't want, for me, to give you more insight, for me, like my biggest battle with my relationships was I was really unfaithful in them. I would cheat in every one of my relationships. And so for me, moving forward from a place of health, it's like I need to communicate these things, because if it doesn't, it turns into shame, it turns into guilt, and it goes down this really dark path. And so for me, having as open a relationship with my partner is really important, and it triggers her. Like she's like, I don't like hearing that you say these things, and I'm like, it's important. Like I understand that, and like I love you, and I think you're beautiful, and I'm not going to action it, and all those things. And I'm reassuring her, and she's pregnant, so she's self-conscious. So maybe I'm not mentioning it every single time I see a good looking girl, but it's still important that I have some form of open dialogue so that the shame doesn't fester, and so that it doesn't feel like I'm living a lie and all these things, because I know where that will take me. I know I've been down that path fucking 8 times, and I don't like that path, and I'm on this new path over here. And so it's really important, and I'm really grateful that I've got that with my partner now.
You mentioned talking to her like when you masturbate and stuff. Do you think there's a lot of shame around there for men because they're like, oh, when I'm in a relationship, it's bad to masturbate. I can only have sex with my partner, kind of thing.
Definitely, man. I think there's a lot of sexual shame around men that we don't talk about. I think 99% of men are addicted to porn,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't. That's not a conversation. Why is that not a conversation? Like it's an addiction, Like every day watching porn, and it's like that's an addiction, man. Oh, you can't go to sleep. What do? Just rub one out.
I
That's
tell
an
you right
addiction,
now, that
man.
was me.
Yeah, yeah, man. And I think for any man listening, you want to deepen your relationship, and you want to, uh, even if you're single, you want to live a fucking a more connected, like revitalized life, like connected to your own life source and energy. Stop watching porn, and that's been a real battle for me. It's like I've tried maybe 5 or 6 times to quit, and it just slowly creeps in, and it's like it'll quit, and then I'll be like, just once,
Mm.
and then it's just one more, and then all of a sudden it's like 3 months later I'm watching it twice a day again, and I'm like, how the fuck, I went 6 months without it, how am I now twice a day again? How did this? And it creeps in. And so it's really important for me that goes, because it's I mean, we can do a whole nother podcast
Yeah,
on
I
that. And
know.
I realize we've gone like this is a solid podcast, so I won't go too far into that, but I would drop the porn thing for sure. And then to your question, I think there is a lot of shame. There's a lot of shame of like, where do we do it? We do it in the toilet. We do it in the toilet when no one's watching, and we come out and we're like, oh, what did I just watch? And like, there's a lot of shame. Whereas like you remove the shame and you embrace that area of your life, what will actually happen is you don't one result is you don't do it as much, because there's no shame keeping you stuck. Shame keeps you stuck, so you embrace it. You're like, oh, I actually don't need to do that anymore. Or like, what am I actually, what's this poor solution trying to solve? What's the underlying thing? And you're able to explore it more. When it's in shame, you don't want to look at it. You like go into the bathroom, rub one out, and come back out, and you don't think about it again. You just, you know, fuck, mate. Like down the porn thing. Have you ever come off a session and you're like, what the fuck was I just watching?
Yeah.
Like, because you have to up it as human beings. You have to up it. Like when you're 15. I think I started watching porn at 14. High school 13, first year of high school, 13 years old, start watching porn. And back then it wasn't what it is now, but it's like lesbian. You know, you're like watching lesbian, and then it's normal sex, and then it's this, and then it's that, and then all of a sudden it's fucking 6 guys, 1 girl, and you're like,
Yeah.
what am I watching, man? You know, because you have to, it's like you're chasing that high. How that plays out in your sex life, like I was reading statistics, it's like 80 something percent of porn now is aggressive towards the female. You're watching that twice a day for 10 years. It's no wonder we view women as these objects that we have to fuck instead of these beautiful people that we get to come together and connect with and have this beautiful, deep, loving experience. It's like you take that language and have that language in a 17-year-old's conversation, they're going to look at you and go, what the fuck? You puffed? You're gay? Were you a
Yeah.
pussy? Like, you know, we're beating this love making out of our language. It's like, no, man, that's what sex is. Sex is this beautiful connection of love making. And it's difficult, man. As I said, I've tried to quit porn 5 or 6 times and it comes back, but it's about removing the shame, communicating with my partner. Hey, babe, I just watched porn. And like, oh, how was it? What did you watch? Like having those conversations. I think women can do a much better job of holding men in their shame. Women don't want to hold men in their shame, you know, because the things that men are ashamed of, oh, you'll be fucking, oh, it'll keep you up at night. Yeah, like it'll keep you up at night. So it's such a fucking, like, that's another conversation in itself.
That's a rabbit hole. We could do a whole new podcast on that, bro. But as we start to wrap up, man, was there any maybe some piece of advice, tools, tips, strategies that you could leave the listeners with?
Hurt people. And it's a cliche, but it's true. And so what do we do with that information is, one, we try to heal ourselves. We try to heal our own wounds so that we're not out there hurting other people. And two, we just try to give people the benefit of the doubt, and we try to look for like, okay, this person's being an absolute fuckwit, but like, I don't know what's going on in his life. You know, that doesn't mean that you put up with the fuckwits, but it means that there's a level of compassion and empathy towards it. And I think we can all do with just being better people, like being good people from empathy, compassion. That you know, we've talked about so much in today, so it's hard to give like a direct tool of like, okay, who am I trying to talk to here? But as a general statement, it's like, just do the work on yourself, heal yourself, and then take that, because hurt people, healed people heal people. You know, it's the same. So someone bumps into you, says fuck you, and you go, hey man, like, you all right? And that person, what did you say? Your quote: hate knocked on the door, love answered, and hate wasn't there.
Yeah.
I'm gonna steal that and use that. That's a good quote, man. That's my advice. You know, that is, come at it from love. Hate begets hate. Fire. It's hate you. Hate. Fuck you. Fuck you, man. Who do you think you are? You know, it's like, oh. So I love that saying. I'm definitely taking that with me.
Awesome, bro. Last question. Dill, when your time's all up and done in this earth, what would be 2 words that you would love people to use to describe the person that you were and the life that you lived?
Well, this is not answering your question, so I apologize, because I hate when people don't answer the question. But I would say, man, like, if people talk about me in a way that like he brightened up a room and left people better off than when he met them, I've done my job. I've lived a good life. You know, like if I can leave people better off in small interactions, big interactions, I would have lived a good life.
Awesome. Perfect answer, bro. Before we go, for the listeners, where can they find you and all the work that you're doing?
Yeah, so I'm really active on social media. So my Instagram at Dylan.Roos, DYLAN.ROOS, big there. My all the links are there. That's really great. You know, my website's dylanrooscoaching.com. You can check out Momentum as well, the momentumlifestyle.com. That's another spot that you can find me, or the Momentum Lifestyle Instagram. So those 2 things, yeah, they're a good place to find me.
Awesome. Dylan, fuck, I've enjoyed this chat, eh? This has been an amazing chat. Thank you once again for taking some time out of your day. I know we went a bit over time, but there was so much gems, so much value in this. So thank you.
Thank you, brother. Looking forward to doing this again.
All good. And for all the listeners, if you got some value, I know you would have. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe, share it on your social media, all that good stuff. Go check out what Dylan's doing. He's doing amazing work, and we'll see you guys in the next episode. Cheers.